Hello, welcome to Chapter 10, Social and Personality Development in Middle Childhood. We are going to cover these objectives, theories of personality, social and personality development, self-concept, advances in social cognition, the social world and school-age child, and influences beyond family and peers. These are the learning objectives we will be covering in this chapter. First of all, let's take a look at development from what's called psychoanalytic theories. Freud talks about the challenges to form emotional bonds with peers and to move beyond earlier formed bonds. So failure leads to feelings of inferiority in school or social settings, and it tends to catapult from there. Erickson talks about the challenges to develop a sense of competence and willingness to work toward a goal, which is industry versus inferiority stage. So what traits or traits describe you best? Now, a trait is any stable pattern of responses across situations. Longitudinal research suggests some stability emerges during middle childhood. There's the big five of personality traits. This is which would be extroversion or introversion, agreeableness or disagreeableness, conscientiousness or non-conscientiousness, neuroticism or non-neuroticism, openness or closed-mindedness. Those are the big five. Bandura and reciprocal determinism talks about three components: the person component traits, the behavior, and the environment. These three mutually influence one another. Bandura's determinism model takes a social cognitive view of personality. He suggests that three components, which we just talked about, in environment, individual behaviors, and cognitive factors, such as beliefs, expectancies, and personal dispositions, are all influenced by each other and play reciprocal roles in determining personality. This shows the five big personality traits that we reviewed earlier. The psychological self is a person's understanding of his or her enduring psychological characteristics. Comparisons and self-descriptions, for instance, I'm smarter than most kids. This is where a person's understanding of his or her enduring psychological characteristics emerges from early to middle childhood, becomes more complex, uses comparisons and self-descriptions, less tied to external features, more centered on feelings and ideas. Self-efficacy is about the individual's belief in his or her own capacity to cause intended events. And this comes from social comparisons, encouragement from valued sources such as parents. So if a parent says that, you're really good at doing that, they start feeling more self-efficacious. Actual experiences have the greatest impact to increasing someone's self-efficacy. Whereas self-esteem, on the other hand, is how a person feels about themselves. And this begins to develop around age 7. Their self-worth, how they believe in themselves. Key components of self-esteem is the amount of discrepancy between what a child desires and what a child thinks he or she has achieved. Overall support the child receives from important people, especially peers and parents. Self-esteem is stable in the short term, but somewhat less over slow periods of several years. Origins of self-esteem is a child's own direct experience with success or failure. Labels and judgments from others, the value of a child attaches to some skill or equality, is affected by peers and parents' attitudes. The child is a psychologist. It begins around age 7, their self-concept, and that better understanding that same person plays different roles in life, such as parent and spouse. Moral reasoning is the process of making judgments about the rightness or wrongness of specific acts. Piaget has studied children playing games to help understand moral development. There's what's called moral realism, which is the beginning of the middle childhood period. Moral realism is a belief that rules can't be changed because they come from authority figures, and because violating the rules leads to punishment. Moral relativism is realization that rules can be changed if all agree. Punishment doesn't come from rules violation, but from being caught. Accidents are not caused by naughty behavior. Moral relativism begins around the age of 8. Children start to make up rules to the game, but everyone follows the same rules when following the game. Now, 8-year-olds do weigh intentionally when making moral judgments. 12-year-olds tend to remain egocentric in their moral reasoning. How do you encourage moral reasoning? Lacana posits that the development of mature moral reasoning takes many years. Parents and teachers can support this development in 6 to 12-year-olds in a variety of ways. By requiring decisions for what is wanted, by praising, using social conventions, by having a couple punishment with explanations, teaching with reciprocity, providing meaningful choices, encouraging obedience and love and respect, not fear, challenging the egocentrism, and encouraging charitable projects. So in this part in your book, which of Lacona's suggestions are most relevant for a mom? And do you agree that Andrea, in the case of Andrea, if it was necessary to punish the girl? If so, what additional steps do you think Andrea should take to help Marisol learn the importance of respecting other people's property? Now, parental expectations. Parents recognize children's increasing abilities to self-regulate. This is the ability to conform to parental standards of behavior without direct supervision. Parents must be good at self-regulation themselves. They have to model it. Higher expectations could be coupled with parental monitoring, increasing self-regulation. Culture may play a role in the age of expected behaviors. An authoritative parental style most often produces socially competent children. Authoritative, not authoritarian. Children both assertive and responsible in relationships as a result of autonomy, accountability, and that parental style. Birth order also plays a difference. In your book, they suggest that usually the person taught first has the best parenting experience. And then what the resource dilution hypothesis is that progressive watering down of parental material and psychological resources happen with each birth. So parents give less and less effort with the second, third, and fourth child. So only the firstborn children may get more of that kind of attention. That's critical to cognitive development. Sibling relationships appear to make positive contributions as well to children's social and emotional development. And here's a little question or discussion. What kinds of sibling relationships would harm rather than help a child's emotional development? What situations might you expect children to show social skills that are superior to those children who have siblings? Sometimes, if your only role model is an adult, the child might have better skills as opposed if they're learning bad habits from their siblings. Caregiver relationships. One sibling is maybe a quasi-parent for the other. If you're having what's called a buddy relationship, that's where both members of the pair try to be like each other. Critical or conflicting relationship is teasing, quarreling, and attempts at domination. Happens a lot of times in sibling relationships. However, only children as well adjusted as children with siblings, they tend to have higher achievement scores. Siblings, if it's an affectionate sibling relationship, tends to mitigate stressful events such as parental divorce. So if parents are going through divorce, siblings may turn to each other for support, which is a good thing. It could positively contribute to children's social and emotional understanding. Rival relationships are low in any form of friendliness or support. Casual relationship with siblings have relatively little to do with each other. So there's kind of a ranking of different sibling relationships. Friendships. Children are open, supportive, and cooperative with friends. Those are some indicators. Peer importance increases as they become middle children, and that best friend will start emerging, and they'll form reciprocal trust, problem solving, conflict management. There's a nice little video here on child and adolescent friendships. Next this is a description of friendships written by a 10-year-old, illustrating the way older school-age children think about friends. Notice the description is not just physical, but they also look at psychological as well. Cultural influence. This appears in every culture. It's I'm talking about gender segregation. It's visible as early as age 3 or 4. There's a preference for same-sex playmates that increases across middle childhood. Rough and tumble play occurs between boys and is avoided by girls. Boys tend to establish stable peer groups with dominance hierarchies. Girls tend to develop social skills based on self-disclosure. Boundary violations with gender segregation. There's usually a ritualized situation where boys and girls play together, such as chasing games. Girls are more often play in pairs or small, fairly exclusive groups. Boys tend to appear to focus on competition, playing sports, and dominance. Girls tend to include more agreement, compliance, and self-disclosure. However, cooperative play is most common among both sexes. In all boys groups, physical aggression remains high. School-age boys often show approval for aggression. Girls tend to use what's called relational aggression. This is aggression aimed at damaging another person's self-esteem or peer relations. Ostracism or threats of ostracism, cruel gossip, or facial expressions of disdain are examples of relational aggression. Retaliatory aggression is where aggression is to get back at someone who's hurt you. And there's a kind of a cool little video of relational aggression. It was pretty mean, kind of like the movie Mean Girls. Okay, relational aggression. This is like ostracism, being left out of the group, cruel gossip, facial expressions. Girls tend to display more relational aggression. That's aimed at damaging another person's self-esteem or in relationships, or excluding them from the group, or cruel gossip. Both boys and girls increase retaliatory aggression. This is aggression to get back at someone who has hurt you. Peers support retaliatory aggression, whereas parents find it unacceptable. Can you think of examples to illustrate each kind of aggression? Next is bullying. It's a complex form of aggression. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be words, it could be actions. But this is where there's a pattern of behavior where a bully routinely aggresses another person. Conduct disorder is a psychological disorder where children, their social or academic functioning is impaired by patterns of antisocial behavior. This may include bullying, destruction of property, theft, deceitfulness, or violating the rules over and over. Victims have certain characteristics in common, including anxiety, passivity, sensitivity, low self-esteem or self-confidence, lack of humor, and comparative lack of friends. Cross-cultural studies show that these characteristics are found among habitual victims across a wide variety of cultural settings. So what do you think? Decide which of these two statements you agree with. We should have programs that seek to reduce bullying among school-age children. It should include a component that teaches victims to be more assertive in the face of bullying. Programs that seek to reduce bullying should focus on changing the bully's behavior and helping him or her to understand how damaging bullying behavior is to victims. Probably a combination of two, both of them would be good. Social status as an child's classification is popular, rejected, or neglected. A lot of times the popular kid, they're the attractive, they're physically larger, they display positive, supporting, non-punitive, non-aggressive social behaviors towards other children. They take turns in conversation. They explain things. They regulate strong emotions. They are perceptive and empathetic. Withdrawn children, they realize that they're disliked by peers. Eventually, they give up trying for peer acceptance and become socially recluse or withdrawn. They experience feelings of loneliness. Aggressive, rejected children are usually disruptive and uncooperative, but think peers like them, so they're playing the clown for attention. They're unable to control expression of strong emotions. They interrupt peers more and fail to take turns. Boys may be rejected for aggression, or it may make them more popular. Two types of rejected children. They're either neglected or rejected. They're very different from their peers. They're shy, highly creative. Neglected children may be lonely and depressed. Let's talk about poverty. Parents in poverty tend to talk to their children less. Children going into kindergarten have about 5,000 less words in their repertoire compared to kids who are not in poverty. Definitely makes a advantage or disadvantage for a child. The rate is higher for younger children. They provide fewer age-appropriate toys. They spend less time providing educational opportunities. They have stricter discipline and an emphasis on obedience. Poverty reduces options for parents. They may not be able to afford prenatal care. They have fewer choices for affordable child care, but maybe they're living in a smaller and less inadequate housing. This graph shows the percentage of people in the United States living in poverty from 1959 to 2011, including children under 18. For families with at least one child, poverty is defined as annual income of less than $15,000. But notice, although compared to other high-income nations, we still have one of the highest poverty rates. It's definitely increased in the last 50 years. Okay, next is children in poverty are more often ill and miss school, have lower IQ scores, not because they're not as intelligent, but they just didn't have the enriching experiences that other students have. They perform poorly in school, they exhibit more behavior problems. Resiliency is a kind of a big word that's used, especially kids that have gone through trauma. Resiliency is like having shock absorbers that deal with things in life. High IQ helps. Competent adult parenting helps. Effective schools. Secure initial attachments. In other words, one person that cares about them. Strong community helping network. Stable parental employment, and strong sense of ethnic identity. All those are protective factors for resiliency. Now, children of inner city poverty may grow up exposed to gangs, street violence, be overcrowded in homes, may lack furniture or bed, so they're subject to more abuse and drug abuse. These children often show symptoms of what's called post-traumatic stress, which involves street disorders, sleep disorders, angry outbursts. There's usually high rates of high school failure. Of course, they probably witnessed or became victims of violent crimes. So, true or false? Is there a causal link between viewing violent television and aggressive behavior in children? I'd say yes and no. Bandura's study showed a link of violence with aggressive behavior. But if you look at this chart, there's a, oops, I gotta go back. There's a causal link between violent television and aggressive behavior. There's significant short-term aggression in children who watch aggressive programs. Those who watch more television are more aggressive in the long term. And this leads to emotional desensitization. Pro-social behavior is enhanced by quality programs that teach moral, social values like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and Sesame Street. But if you look at this figure 10, as children get older, higher percentage of them own their own media devices, and parents become less likely to regulate children's use of media. And in addition, older children spend more time using electronic media and less time reading print media than younger children do. Pro-social behavior, 8-year-old boys who watched a lot of violent television were already more aggressive than their peers. On the other hand, Calvert in 2003 showed how a quality program, such as Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Sesame Street, are effective in teaching tools for pro-social behavior. Wealthier children tend to have and use computers at home. This creates what's called a digital divide. They're able to use it for schoolwork, games, email, chat rooms. Boys become more verbal communicators on mixed-sex computer messaging programs. Video games influence on children's behavior. If it's a lot of violent content, it could increase violent behavior. Critics of video game research say that, hey, this can really affect social skill development, physical development, because they're not going outside and playing, and their communication skills, because they're not talking with other people or interacting. This concludes our presentation. Have a great week.